Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast Magic is Real. I'm your host, Shannon. I am a psychic medium. And this podcast is about spiritually transformative experiences. I interview people who have had near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, and other types of experiences in the metaphysical realm. So if you like this video, if you like this podcast, would you do me an easy favor, but a big favor, and just take the time to like the video, comment, even if it's just an emoji. It really helps with the algorithm to get the podcast out to more people who can benefit from it. So thank you for being here. And today I have with me Christine Dollahan. I'm going to read you a little bit from her bio. Her name is Dr. Christine Dollahan, PhD. She's based in New Jersey. She's a life purpose coach, energy psychology practitioner, and an intuitive like me. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. She holds a PhD in transpersonal and humanistic psychology and specializes in consciousness, spirituality, and integrative health. She's also a certified life purpose coach, certified energy healer, certified yoga professional, trained in natural medium and intuitive, and a postpartum doula. Thank you so much, Christine, for taking time out of your day to be with us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
It is my pleasure. So first, we're going to start just checking to make sure Zoom is recording. I would love to hear really why I have you on the show today is to hear all about your experiences and your work, but specifically, you have pre-birth memories. And from what I understand, you've always had them. It wasn't something that one day you woke up and remembered. You just woke up with an automatic, woke up. You just came into the world. I'm assuming as soon as you could sort of put thoughts together and have self-reflection, just remembering where you came from. So when I ask for your background, I guess we would probably start there, but I'd love to know about you and what your background is and what your childhood was like as it relates to your spiritual journey and growth.
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I do have pre-birth memories, and um I really don't understand, like I mean, I have an understanding now why I have them, but they they kind of just like it's just memories that just stuck with me. It's almost like everybody else goes through this veil and they get deleted with that information. For me, it didn't get deleted for some reason, and I think it's completely related to my life purpose and why I'm here and what I'm here to share. I think that that was not a glitch in the system, because for the longest time I'm like, maybe it was a glitch in the system that I remembered all of this. But yeah, so those memories, would you like me to talk about them a little bit, like
Yeah, I
just
would love that.
brief
Yeah.
anybody who hasn't heard of them yet? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I what I remember is probably like a couple minutes before I was born. I remember sort of walking down this path with this mentor of mine. And I can only call him a mentor because he had like long robes, and I got this like feeling from him. And I say him because that's how I perceived him. I was walking down this path with him, and it was the best way I could describe it is it's like it was like a path of light. It wasn't like a path that you could find in any park here on planet Earth, but it was similar to that. So we were kind of floating in light, and I was light, and I perceived myself as light, and I perceived him as light too, but I kind of knew there was like an energetic differentiation between us because I knew he was like sort of more advanced, or like he was not one of those souls that was like incarnating or had like incarnation on his mind. And I can't tell you exactly what was like where he came from or how he got there, but he was more of like a master, like somebody who was able to stay in the spiritual realm and was kind of guiding souls of my kind, through the universe and through the incarnation processes. And I was just kind of assigned to my case, almost like a caseworker. And we were having a telepathic conversation. I knew in the moment that I had to go back to planet Earth. And I don't have specific memories of what I was planning to do there. I knew it was something big, and we had talked about it, and they were like, we talked about it, you have to go. And I was kind of resistant to it because it's really beautiful over on the other side. and the realm that I was in. And I, you know, with the memories came also like memories of other realms and other dimensions, which is really interesting. I read books, you know, as I was researching this and trying to figure out if this was just a figment of my imagination or actually like memories. I came across a Swiss psychic medium and energy healer who was describing precisely the things that I had memories of, which was really validating. And she was describing these different frequency dimensions. Some are lower frequency and some are higher frequency. And what we would describe as higher frequency, we would say was heaven, that what Bible describes as heaven or the heavenly realms. And the lower frequencies are what, you know, like Dante talked about, like the hell realms and all of that. So, you know, I was not in the hell realms, obviously. I was in those higher frequencies, and it's beautiful over there. I mean, I didn't really want to go. So long story short, I was walking down there and I was kind of like, do I really have to go? Can I just stay back a little bit longer? I really don't want to go. And he was like, no, we discussed this. You know, we discussed this was the best course of action for you. We discussed that, you know, doing it this way was going to like alleviate you of any karma and, you know, and all of that. And I'm like, okay, I guess. Now, you know, I've talked to other people and then gotten feedback from people, and I wanted to make this, you know, clear to people because they were like, well, you know, were you made to go down there, or were you, you know, kind of like, was this like a um did you not have free will to go down there? And I want to say I had free will. I could have chosen not to go. And I don't know what would have happened. Like maybe I would have had to like repeat 500 lifetimes or whatever. I don't know what would have happened. I just had a sense, like an intuitive sense, I guess, like what I use now as my intuitive sense, I guess, you know, that soul sense, that if I didn't go, like I'd have to, you know, deal with a lot of like more planning and a lot of more things. And I also knew that it was good for me to go. Like it was almost like, you know, you know the gym is a good place, you know you're going to get fit and slim and all those things, right? But you don't always want to go. You know, you try to like talk yourself out of it, or you try to get permission from a friend not to go, and oh, let's just go to the coffee place where it's warm, you know. It was kind of like that feeling. It was almost like, okay, I know I need to go down to Earth Gym. I know I have some things to do there, and I really don't want to go there because I know how hard it is down there too. Because I've had some lifetimes down there, and I really don't want to have to repeat all this birth and death and the middle part and all of that. But, you know, we got to the hub, and it was this vortex, like a swirling vortex. It's almost like a helicopter hub. And I saw other souls on the sides with their mentors, their caseworkers, and they were just doing their merry thing. We were just exchanging love. I couldn't hear what they were talking about telepathically. I just knew, okay, they were also getting ready to incarnate. And I don't know if they were incarnating on planet Earth or if they were incarnating somewhere else. I just knew, okay, those souls are doing the same thing as I am. And so I was there, and there was sort of like this bittersweetness of like, okay, like I really don't want to go. And what if I don't, you know, what if I don't remember you? And what if I can't speak with you? And then kind of mischievously, but in a loving way, my mentor was like, okay, so we discussed this. You have to go. You know, you can always reach out to us via your mind. Like this connection is never broken. So remember that. And in that moment, he was like, and now you have to go. And he pushed me, and I kind of fell backwards into the vortex. I was sucked into the vortex. It was really, really dark. And then there was a switch point where it got really bright, and I sort of slammed into my baby body. And then there was just a lot of emotions at once. Like it was just kind of like a pain, like a I took a first breath. It was painful. It was painful to be in the cold air because it was so wonderful over there. Obviously, I was in my mom's womb too, so there must have been like a translation between the spiritual and the physical there as well.
Yeah.
And it was just bright light, and I was just like, okay, here we go again. And then I just fell into a coma and was just, you know, as my mom will tell everybody, very easy baby. I was sleeping most of the time, and, you know, have little memories here and there of, you know, people kind of poking into my crib and saying gaga goo goo, and me thinking, dudes, like, you really don't need to talk to me like this. I'm like a fully thinking person in here, you know, and then just kind of passing out and be like, okay, let me just do my thing. And that was, I would say, like the first half year of my life. And then I just kind of became mush, because I think my soul, this is how I analyzed it, my soul, that soul essence, sort of fully merged with my physical body and my physical experience, and it was just trying to figure it out, like the synapses of my brain were connecting with the spiritual, and all of that. So it just became mush. And then I was just a normal baby until about a year and a half, maybe two. No, year and a half. I wasn't quite walking yet. And I remember like crawling on the floor. And I remember like the outlines of the apartment my parents were kind of living in. And someone, I don't know if it was my father or my mother, were kind of looking at me and they were like, Christine, Christine, to like figure out if I responded to my name. And I kind of looked up at them, and then I had like another like conscious thought, like I had right when I came into my body, thinking, Christine, that's a really weird name. Wasn't I called something else before? And then I had a whole download of like lifetimes that I had beforehand and how I'd left my body, and so I was figuring all of that out. Like I remember different deaths. I remember being afraid of different deaths and then thinking, oh, it's not that bad as I was moving out of my body. And I had all of those downloads. And then specifically when prior to this lifetime where I was a little girl and I was called something else like Lisa or Lena or something like that. And I liked that name far better. And I was thinking, oh, I wish I was called that again, And then I just kind of went back into my baby self. And those memories sort of stuck with me for the rest of my childhood. And I like come in and out of them and kind of reflect on them and all of that. So yeah, I'll stop there. I could talk.
Oh, I
Oh,
have so many questions, but also I'm fascinated. So thank you, because I know you've shared this story before, and I know it's old hat to you, but it's new to me and everyone else. And I think it's so interesting. I have so many questions. So I know that, well, I want to go back to one thing you said, because you said that your sort of caseworker, I love that, said something like, this way, if you go back, it'll alleviate some karma. And I know that there's this sort of misunderstanding about what karma means, because in this world, we sometimes call it like karma is like justice. Like if you do something bad, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass. And that's what karma is. But what I understand is karma is literally just sort of your life lessons. So, but I would love to hear your take on that, and what would it mean to alleviate that karma? Do you understand what that means when you're a soul on the other side? What, like, what's the disadvantage of carrying that karma? Do you know? Do you remember? If that makes sense, it's kind of like, why do we need to do that for our soul?
Yeah. Um, so I can only speak to my own memory and my own understanding, of course, but what I understood was that I had sort of like billions of lifetimes. I don't know if it was only on planet Earth because I don't have any memory to that. I could imagine maybe other planets too. But I had like lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of lives. And through all those lives, I kind of like had worked myself different frequency dimensions that I had mentioned earlier. So kind of like from a lower frequency, not fully understanding why I was on planet Earth, um, to like the higher frequency of love. And what that meant was that I really just wanted to, my memory is that I really just wanted to merge back with God. Like I was like thinking, okay, I'm like in the heavenly realms now. And I wasn't fully in the merging back with God realm, right? Because otherwise I would be merged back with God, right? I wouldn't be, having to need to like individualize and come into an individual body to have these life lessons or experiences. But what I also learned, and what I wanted was I wanted to have more experiences of learning what love meant. So, forgiveness, compassion, having really hard experiences, and being able to have compassion for someone else and see their side and see their suffering. So kind of like the way God sees us, right? God doesn't judge. I mean, arguably some texts will say God judges you and punishes you, but from what I understood even to this lifetime, and I think that was one thing I wanted to work through, was this is this really a punishing God, or is it a all loving God who's like there all the time and it's just letting you work through your free life, your life experiences and your free will? So my specific thing was, hey, I want to do everything I can do to merge back with that love and to really fully become that love. And in order to do that, because I've had lifetimes where I wasn't all loving and I did do things, that took the universe out of balance. And so my take to answer your question on karma is it's like justice scales, like balancing scales, right? The universe is made of perfect harmony. It's almost like debt. When we take from the universe and we go into the fear realm where we do something out of jealousy, out of spite, out of that egoic self, then that adds to our debt. That's kind of how I understood it, right? And when we go into the love bank, right, we pay it back. So when we're compassionate, when we give people the benefit of the doubt, when we understand why maybe we've had certain life experiences, and I'm happy to give an example there too, then we pay debt back, right? Because we start understanding it from their perspective. And we start understanding something. And from what I understood is I just wanted to learn more about love and what it meant to lead life lovingly and all compassionately, right? Sort of like the God source does, so that I could merge back. And so, for me, it was also, I knew that I had chosen like a heart life. I had a client the other day and Spirit put it this way. They were like, there's like, if you put it in like when you go to a restaurant and they have like spices and like spicinesses, right? Like it's like a little spicy or like mild, a little spicy, medium spicy, extra spicy, right? And life is like that. Some people will choose like a life that is pretty easy, right? And so then you have maybe like a mild spicy or, or just a little spicy, right? And it's like a life that is just like, okay, I'm just going to float around. I'm just going to have an experience. It's going to add to my karma bank, but I don't want to have to deal with the hard stuff. And then there's lives that are like medium spicy or extra spicy, right? And I think I chose like between medium and extra spicy in some ways, right? And I knew that too, because they were like, well, you could choose a medium spicy life, but you would have to like, it would add on to your, like couple more lifetimes. And I'm like, no, 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 no. If we do it right. I'm taking the extra spicy and I'm doing this now. And I've been, I mean, I'm only 37 years old, but that's really been my drive in my life. I'm like, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And I want to get it all done. And I want to learn as much as I can because I know this is my opportunity to do it, right?
Yeah.
You can only learn this in life. I can't do this work on the other side. That's why we need to incarnate. So I'm like, if I'm doing this, if I'm coming to Earth School, I'm doing it. So let's go. But that was also my hesitancy because you never know. You're kind of like, okay, I'm gonna go into 11th grade, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna flunk, right? It's just that
Yep.
nervous. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that you did share this with your parents from what I remember. And it's not that you weren't believed or you were shamed. It's just that, of course, we always think, oh, kids have such wild imaginations. And so when you did share it, what was the response? And did you still know that it was real? And throughout your childhood, did you sort of put it aside to just be a kid? Or did you feel this sense of soul purpose all the way through childhood into high school? Because those are the years when you're just kind of figuring life out and making mistakes and doing all the kid things and worrying about friends and dating or school or sports or whatever it is that you're into.
Right. So the response was, I don't think I ever really told my father. I did tell my mom, and my parents come from more or less of an agnostic background, very fact-based, very science-based. And so for them, it was like, this is absolutely not true. Like they never said it in that way, but my mom's response was always like, yeah, 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 that was probably a dream. You probably
Yeah.
dreamt about this because it's not possible, right? Your brain, like, this is just like you made this up, kind of,
Hmm.
This is a dream. And I remember as a child kind of being sort of disoriented by it because obviously you look up to your parents and you think they
Yeah.
know everything. And so if my mom thinks this was a dream, then maybe it was a dream. And that was actually what got me to investigate it more. And I did, like, I remember times, especially at night times, I remember lying in bed and thinking about this. I remember being actually very psychic as a child and being able to see beings around me, long, tall beings around me, angels around me. I have my grandmother around me. Um, I was, especially as a younger child, remembering, kind of dreamlike states where I was, downloaded with stuff, and it sort of stopped when I was 5 or 6. But I was always, and this is what my mom will confirm, I was always a rather sensitive child. And so sounds, environments, all of that was always overwhelming for me.
Me
And
too.
I've had a hard time making friendships, even when I was little, like in preschool, because the kids were either too loud or they kind of sensed that I was really sensitive. So they would try to bully me, and I wouldn't know what to do with it because I was, I also always had this like sense of like extreme justice of like, even as a little child, we need to be loving and we need to be kind and we need to be just to each other. And it was unfathomable to me if a child was like mean or whatever, like that was very hurtful to me. And that kind of came through as a child and into being a teenager, um, where I just felt like, okay, I'm different. Like I can sense things. I can see things. I mean, as I was turning into like my teenage years, the seeing kind of stopped. Um, like in the sense of like that I would physically see beings. It like remained in my third eye, but at some point it was so overwhelming and also scary to me that I just shut it out. And then there was this whole period between, I want to say like 12 and maybe like 18 or 19, where I was really lost because I didn't have a sense of purpose. Like I knew I had like little experiences. For instance, as a teenager, I loved to dance to EDMR, like
Mhm.
electronic music. And I grew up near New York City. And at 18, I was allowed to go to the clubs. I wasn't allowed to drink, but I was allowed to go to the clubs. And I didn't want to go to the clubs for drinking. I wanted to go to the clubs to dance.
Yeah.
And there used to be um, a club in a desanctified church, and I remember having this like unreal experience of dancing to this music in what used to be like the sanctuary, and like feeling God just pour into me. And I'm thinking, my parent doesn't exist, but clearly he does, and I'm just dancing away and like having this communication. And so for me, music and artwork, like I would communicate in artwork, um, made a whole lot of sense, but it faded out because this isn't real. And then very, as a teenager too, you get put into like the freak, like she's a freak. She's saying she talks to ha ha ha, she talks to spirit, ha ha ha, and then of course you're sensitive, as you probably can
Yeah.
relate, super sensitive, and you don't want to be hurt, so you just keep it to yourself. So I became very sort of like, you know, I was actually bullied in school, believe it or not. I think because some of the girls also noticed, okay, she's weird, she's kind of quiet, she's very
Yeah.
serious. We don't know what to do with her. So, and then so I became a loner, and I became actually rather depressed, I have to tell you, because there was no validation for my experiences. And I was very, alone in all of them. So that's kind of how I experienced my teenage years. And then into my 20s, I decided to, I didn't know what to do with my life because nothing felt like passion to me, like, except for art. I was good at art. And I remember now that art was, or I realize now in retrospect, that art and music was my pathway to the spiritual and to my intuitive gifts. So when I was doing that, I would get intuitive downloads, like my artworks would just download itself to me. And being in that flow felt so good that I wanted to become a painter. Was discouraged from doing that because you can't make money with painting. So I was like, okay, if I can't do it with that, then how about art history? And so I decided to go and study art history in Germany because that's where I come from. I'm German, German American now, but I'm originally from Germany. I was born in Switzerland, and both my parents are German. And so I went back and studied there. And that was uh, more or less passionate, but I realize now too, it helped me kind of, because it was hard history, right? And I was going through the periods of history, and I remember like being drawn to more to periods where I'm like, I remember that period. I remember that was really nice. Like 19th century paintings, loved them because I got like an intuitive remembrance of being alive in that period and
Yeah.
loving it. But then, for instance, I was terrified by medieval paintings, and would like get, memories of like spontaneous memories of being burned and the witch hunt and being like, this was awful. And I was and so I think that I had to study it for myself to like kind of work through my past life experiences to come to this point. And then it was actually in Germany, one of my professors there that felt very much like mom, and she felt the same way. She kind of took me in. She lived right across from me, and she would cook me dinner, and I was like her third child, and she would tutor me in archaeology and art history. And she was the one who really got me on the spiritual path, who was like, girl, you got to go on the spiritual path. That's where you need to be. You need to, and so she told me all about Yogananda. She got me into meditating and gave me the books about the Swiss, from the Swiss medium and intuitive that I mentioned earlier. And so that's kind of like how I got on that path. And there was a little bit before that, but I'll stop here.
That's great. Thank you. You know how to tell a story. So much of that is relatable. I was such a sensitive kid that I actually became selective mute and didn't talk because I just was so overwhelmed and anxious. And so I was by myself all the time, and I learned to just be in my own little bubble. And I remember being 5, literally, I have a picture even of it. I was playing dress up by myself because I had no friends. And I thought to myself, something's different about me. Not just that I was weird, because, but like I remember thinking something's totally different about me. And like, I feel like I'm special, not more special than anyone else. But I had this feeling of like something about me isn't like other people. Now I understand that to be just the fact that I was more in tune with my soul self and knew that somehow this isn't really who I am. And there's something else that we're missing here. And so I had a lot of that, not knowing what that really meant at the time, or not being necessarily spiritual. My parents also were agnostic. My mom's more spiritual, but not super. So I think so much of that is relatable. And so many kids shut off their abilities in high school because that's a time when there's so much chaos and there's so much insecurity, and it does not serve us well to be the weird kid who talks to dead people or or has these weird ideas, because then you are not accepted. And I think also on maybe a spiritual level, we're supposed to kind of just have the human experience. And so maybe spirit kind of backs off to say, hey, just go be a person. These are your years where you're really learning about yourself, making all your mistakes, and just go do it and be messy. Um, so I do, that does really resonate. Um, yeah, so anything you want to share that comes to mind about that before we move on, if you do, but yeah.
Yeah, actually, because this experience has been so big for me, I mean, especially my early formative years, I relate to children a lot. I
Yeah.
relate to my own children, but children in general, and the whole idea of motherhood and mothering. And that's really where my passion project is, and helping moms and caregivers and anybody who deals with kids, understand that there's more and more kids coming to planet Earth with these abilities, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we have this whole sleuth of highly sensitive kids are coming in. They're very high consciousness. They have these abilities. And it didn't serve me so much when, my mom was saying, oh, this wasn't real, because it took me a while to like figure it out. It took me on this whole like research path. And so I think I read a book by someone who wrote about the psychic child, and it really resonated with me what she wrote in there. She said that like kind of from 0 to about 5, integrate our spiritual experiences, which resonated with my own experience because I felt like in that time period, from what I remember, it was like kind of coming in and out of my human self, my spiritual self, and I was like trying to like figure out the in between of like how do we merge all of that together. And then between 5 and 10, I had, what I would talk to dead people. I could see my dead grandma standing at the bedside. I saw long figures. I still don't know what they were, but they were kind of protective. They weren't scary. I did see scary things floating around my room too sometimes. I saw angels. I heard things in my head, that was not, in any way mental health related. Like it was
Yeah.
just little voices that would still talk to me. And at like around like 12, I shut that off. And in the book, she says that's kind of like between 6 and 12 is when we develop our spiritual gifts and we're really in tune and in touch with them. And so when we then have caregivers or parents who encourage us in them and say, yes, they're real, and they validate them, and and also kind of develop them, then when that like 12, 13-year-old window hits, and it shuts off, right? At least when you come out of it in your early 20s, right? That's kind of like they say between 12 and then your early 20s, it's when it's shut off. And usually
Yeah.
you don't have access to it. Maybe for the reasons that you said, that is
Yeah.
very plausible. But then at least when you're 22, you don't have to go backtrack and like try to like we did, or even our
Yeah.
parents' generation who are like now in their 60s and are like, oh, I was always intuitive. But you can give kids a heads up, like a head start, and be like, okay, remember that when what you did when you were 7? Like that's your ability. Now go run with it, because then at 22, 23, you're like, oh, I am intuitive. Cool. Let me do this work, right? And you don't like are like, oh, was this real? Was it not? What am I doing? And I think that as Earth is, I mean, we're going through this massive shift in
Yeah.
consciousness. And as that's happening, there's also this, push by spirit, at least that's how spirit has been talking to me, of educating the parental and the grandparental generations, to really encourage the little ones to live their gifts and to know that,
Yeah.
we're all special. But if you
Hmm.
have gifts, if you're highly sensitive, there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's just a matter of managing it. So that's what I wanted to add to it. Because if I would have
Yeah.
had that
Thank
guy,
you.
my life would have been completely different. But I was
Yeah.
not meant to have guidance, probably because maybe I am meant to make people aware of it now, right? And if I wouldn't have had the experience, I wouldn't have had that post-traumatic growth. So,
I agree. My 20s and 30s were spent in addiction and hating myself and eating
yep.
disorders and drinking and like just I needed those mistakes to happen. I needed to be in pain so that I could be messy and mess everything up so that I could heal, so that I could come to this place where now I can help support other people in their own healing and also have this understanding of how protected we really are, even if it seems like everything is terrifying right now. On that note, you talked about we are entering a time, some call it the Age of Aquarius, about this collective expansion of consciousness. And I'd love to know what that means to you. And if you do, I don't personally channel from high, I mean, I'm sure I do, specialize in channeling higher beings that are telling me things or predictions, or I'm not getting necessarily at this point in my development, um, like these massive downloads from whatever Galactic Federation or spirit guides or whoever it is. I do get nudges and I do have things about my personal life and I do get messages from other people's and my own loved ones and spirit that are very, very clear. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are, your experience, your knowledge, your insights. Obviously, I know it's your experience, but whatever you'd like to share about that, about what is happening. I mean, we've always lived in crazy times and there's been so much violence and war, but this feels like in our generation or our time period, we think we would have evolved so much more. And you're seeing patterns repeating. But I'd just love to get your full insight on everything that's happening right now and where we are time period wise. And now a word from our sponsor. I'll make this really short and sweet. Levityn is not actually a sponsor. However, you can support this podcast when you do purchase a bag of Levityn or subscribe and save. This is a product that I take every single morning. What I love about it is A, it tastes really nice, and I put it in just water. You can put it in almond milk. You can put it in coconut milk. You can put it in any kind of milk. I think it tastes really nice just with water. There's no sugar. It is naturally sweetened with monk fruit. It does not have allergens. I am somebody that cannot eat sugar, so I really appreciate this. And it's not too sweet. It's just enough where it's fresh and grassy. And this is all purely sourced. It's all natural. And I'm just going to read you a few of the key points. 8 super greens, pea and plant protein, fruit and vegetable blend, digestive enzymes, pre and probiotics, plant-based, all natural, nothing artificial, no GMOs, no synthetics, gluten-free, naturally sweetened with monk fruit. And if you subscribe and save, or even just buy a bag, then I get a small percentage of that sale. So if you're looking for a genuinely great product, I am going through some hormonal disruptions. This has given me more energy. I get chronic migraines. This has helped to reduce that. So if you're looking for something of this nature and would like to try it, it would also benefit the podcast. So thank you so much. I will put my affiliate link below. It's magicisreal.levityn.com. That's LIVEDEN.com. And now back to our show.
Sure. So I wrote my dissertation about this, and this goes back to like life purpose, because I think that the pre-birth memory, understanding, all of that goes completely, entirely goes into the expansion of consciousness. I think that we are at a time also, spiritually speaking, where we are letting go of the structure of religion that used to help us, right? I mean, religion will always be there in some ways for those that need the structure, right? But being religious or over being spiritual is something that's two very different pairs of shoes, right? And religion is more, the toolkit, the community, all of that. I think more and more people resonate with being spiritual, which is your connection, your immediate connection with that higher self and whatever that means to you, right? And I think that's part of that whole shift in consciousness, is understanding that there is a beginning, and like it's almost like I think Shakespeare said that, it's just like life is a play on a stage, right? But there's also something before you come on stage and something after you exit the stage, right? And it's the same thing. There's a pre-birth part, and there's an after like life part, right? And then there's the life part. So I think that we're starting to discover that, wow, life does not end like after the physicality of it. It changes, right? Consciousness changes, but energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change. And that's Einstein said that. I think that there's something happening here where science, and there's a paradigm shift in science happening, right? Where we understand that quantum physics very much speaks to spirituality and religiousness and everything that was, that's said in the textbooks, whether it's the Bible or the Quran or any other, they're all basically saying the same thing. So I think we're coming into like an age of balance where we're understanding, wow, it's not that or that, it's all, right? Science is valid, religion is valid, and we can connect it, right? Masculinity is valid and femininity is valid, and we can connect that. About this specific age, I mean, probably, I can't tell you exactly how many prophecies are out there, but there's many, many, many prophecies out there from different tribes, different religious backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds around the world that all have predicted in different ways these times. Some will call it the end times, but the way that I see it, it's not like planet Earth is going to explode and we're all going to be gone. It's more the end times of like a paradigm shift, like understanding, wow, okay, this isn't working anymore. And now we're transforming into something else, right? We're understanding more about ourselves, about the life cycle, right? About that's where, pre-birth and NDEs coming in, right? We're understanding more about who we are as humans and our potential, also meaning that we can tap into energy. We can read energy. Intuition is true and valid, right? We can read other people's minds. Energy is real also around us, and we can manipulate it and we can help people heal with it. So I think all of that is what's happening right now. So this time, even though it looks bad from the outside, is actually really exciting, and it's wonderful to be alive. This is the last big revolution, in my personal opinion, that's going to happen on planet Earth, and it's the revolution of the psyche, of the mind. And it's a big one. So it's exciting to be alive. And it's something that all like different tribes, different people have predicted. The Hopi, there's the Merlin prophecies that not many people know of, and they're very cryptic, but they talk about especially exactly this, and where we will understand that as in heaven, so below on earth, that axiom, like it's just, it all fits together. Even the Bible talks about it. I mean, they talk about it and very, some people will say it very literally, but if you take the literal pictures into like a mythical context, you will understand that it's also just talking about, consciousness and consciousness changing. Now, how do we change consciousness? I think this is a quiet revolution. It's one that happens within us first. And that's why everything's happening without. Many people are withdrawing from politics. Many people are withdrawing from the world. They're starting to do meditation. They're starting to do yoga. They're starting to be interested in energy. They're listening to podcasts like yourself because they want to understand what's happening, right? And the first revolution or the first shift that needs to happen is within us. So as all of us are going through our own traumas and post-traumatic growth, and we're sharing it with the world, we're kind of, it's almost like ping, now, we kind of started it with the next person and like, oh, maybe all of this was right. Maybe I had to go through all of this. Maybe this all makes sense, right? And so as we're all going through our own personal trauma and our own hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell talked about it, that's where the revolution actually is happening, in our own psyches, in our own minds. And when we're then, when we've had these epiphanies, and we continue to have the epiphanies, and we start stepping into our life purpose, then we start touching everybody else's lives, right? And then it starts trickling into like the massive revolution. And that's why I was excited, honestly, when COVID happened, because I had this theory since I entered my PhD program 7 years prior to COVID. And I was like, we're a massive shift of consciousness. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm supposed to, bridge science with, or research with, spirituality, and teach this to people and make people aware. So I had this whole theory going on, and then COVID hit. And I'm like at home and I'm writing about this, and people are like depressed and at home and they can't socialize. Well, of course, if we're constantly out and we're like trying to avoid, and like you were saying, following our addictions and drinking and whatever, and I'm going to deal with the dragons in the background later because it's really uncomfortable, then we can't deal with it. But suddenly in COVID, we were all like in our homes. We had to deal with our own minds. We had to sit with it. There was no escape, right? And for some, it was worse than for others. But I truly think this is what triggered it, and this is what started it. And so now what we see with wars and with all of those things, people are withdrawing more and more into the inner life. But it's meant to be like that. That's what I got from spirit, and that's the theory. My dissertation was entirely channeled. This came from spirit.
Wow.
And so the theory and all of it, which I just talked a little bit about just now, but this is what's happening, and I think this is going to continue to go on for the next 50, maybe 100 years. But as the next generation is coming in, our kids and our grandkids, they're the ones, we're right now in like the deconstruction period, but then our kids and our grandkids, they're the ones that are going to come in, and they're going to be like, energy is real, of course. Psychically aware, of course, I can read your mind, like we can telepathically communicate, because we've created the world for that to happen. And there's no longer going to be like a little Shannon or little Christine thinking like, I'm kind of strange and weird and different, but I can't really voice my, I think that we're really moving into that. And that's, for me, is what's happening in terms of shift in consciousness. And what's happening on planet Earth. I've also received some downloads about the fact that the reason why the veil is getting thinner and thinner and more people are remembering their life plans or having NDEs is because planet Earth is actually moving out of being a schooling planet and moving more into that Aquarian golden age planet where people will be able to telepathically communicate, and it's raising its frequency as we are raising our frequency. So in, I don't know, a certain period of time that I haven't been given, planet Earth won't be in the lower frequencies anymore, but actually in a higher frequency where it no longer will be a schooling planet. And so we're doing our work to push it there and to evolve the planet alongside humanity, which is also evolving, but in the mind space. So that's kind of my take on it, my five pennies.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really hopeful because it still seems like, so many people have forgotten who they are and that we are souls and that we are all one human race and that we all come from the same source. There's so much hatred and so much violence and so much fear. And so it does comfort me to hear that. And you're not the only person that I've heard that from. So even though it might not be in my lifetime, I hope that there will be glimpses of it in my niece and nephew's lifetime and going forward. So thank you for sharing that. It sometimes feels like, how are people ever going to get it when they're just indoctrinated to hate, to fear, to fight? And I always think, if these people could all just have near-death experiences, you know, like if we could just give our world leaders that experience, and maybe they just need to do an ayahuasca journey. I don't know. But I do hope that it becomes more mainstream. It already has, because there was a time when we were all skeptical, at least in the United States. It's a very skeptical,
Right.
practical culture of materialism and money and work and the things that we value, materialistic and very based in success and those kinds of things. Whereas the Native Americans who came before we Europeans that came in and took over, they knew this. Like, I just hope that we can get back to what the Native Americans knew and are still teaching and are still demonstrating, because they were always taught that that was real. So that's why it's such a big part of their culture.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's exactly what's happening. I think that we're kind of like the pendulum is sort of swinging. We were kind of swinging into the more materialistic, um, like, only data is true that I can measure, mathematical kind of like thing. And I think it's coming to balance. I think now we're starting to realize, okay, so the Native Americans were right with what they were saying. And here's quantum physics, and here's everything that we know about the physical world now, right? That quantum physics has seen that actually supports that, right? So now suddenly, in some ways, we have a permission, and it's no longer as woo-woo as we perceived it to be even like 30 years ago, or 37 years ago when I was born. So, and, I think that we're also like part of that revolution is really understanding the difference between fear and love. And we can only really experience like the fear patterns when we do the us against them kind of thing, and then come out of it and realize like, oh, wait a minute, it's not a dualistic world, it's actually we're all one, and I'm looking into my mirror image, because we're all made, we're all God incarnated, right? And that means we're all love, right? But I think that in order to get there, this is kind of touching on what I was saying earlier, you can only get there through the traumatic experiences and through living through fear and through living through hatred and through living through how awful that feels in your body, how awful that feels in your mind, right? And from that point, when you've just had enough, that's when you're going to go look for other things and be like, hey, maybe there's another way. Oh, maybe this is how it's meant to be. And then having that expansive, right? But I think that that's why we're all going through this in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. And now we're in an era where things have gotten really wild, because now there are hearings about disclosure. And yes, aliens exist and ETs and UFOs, and some of it's, there's controversy about how much of it is sort of scare tactics or manipulation tactics and how much of it is real and the drones and distractions and all of that sort of thing. But as a child, was very skeptical about things like UFOs and aliens. But then I actually had my own experiences, which I've shared on this podcast before, as a kid in the 80s when we had no cell phones or any kind of electronic stuff. And I saw a silent craft in my backyard and also in my room, one of those plasma sort of balls thing. And so I'd love to hear just sort of your thoughts because in my mind, now I understand that they aren't other, they are us. And in fact, I heard a really interesting theory that in a documentary, sorry, I forget the name of it, but where they're talking about the theory that aliens, quote unquote, whether it's like the Greys or whoever, they're actually us in the future traveling back in time. And then if you think about it, they are an evolved form of us. As you said, their brains are bigger, their eyes are bigger to perceive the world. Their mouths are small. Why? Because they don't need to speak because they're communicating telepathically. So it's like how we're evolving that the bodies are really small because we may not need them as much, but the head is bigger because we have more and more information, more knowledge, and bigger eyes to see more things. So I just love to hear your thoughts on ETs, UFOs, what is going on here? Um, are we about to make contact or whatever you want to kind of talk about in that realm?
Yeah. I mean, I do have some memories of being visited, and I think that the tall figures that I've seen here and there in my childhood, like lying in my bed, were of extraterrestrial
Yeah.
nature. I've also had a past life regression or a regression back into that Dolores Cannon style,
Mm,
and remembered some things right before my 12th birthday, right before I became, before I got my first period. And I was informed by somebody who's far more, much more of an expert in the ET realm that it's common that you have an ET experience at that point as a woman, especially when you are kind of like put into, service. So, and then after that, I remember having sort of like this disoriented like 4 weeks where I was just crying for 4 weeks because I couldn't make sense of the world anymore. It was just everything was feeling strange. And she said that's very common. But in that, memory that I had through the past life regression, which was specifically related to the ETs, I don't remember being afraid. I remember lots of light, and I remember that they were friendly and that they
yeah.
were here to help me. And I never really perceived them as anything negative or anything to be afraid of. Um, that's sort of my take. Are we going to make contact? Absolutely. I think we're right there. I think it could happen this year, could happen next year. We're right there. And I think we're ready for it too. I think there's going to be an outburst of like fear,
Yeah.
but I think that we have enough people that are aware that this might actually not be a bad thing, that this might actually be a good thing in some way, or who are at least ready to have something like this, and they can hold themselves and not fall over and be in a like a freeze mode for 3 weeks or something like that. So that's kind of my my insight. I did there's a period right around the holidays. It starts on the 24th and it ends on January 6th, where it's said in the Germanic traditions that the veils between the worlds are very thin, and that what you dream of or what you perceive us of psychically is bound to come true in the next year. And I actually did have some dreams about, alien craft sort of hovering over Earth and being discovered. So whether that was truly psychic or not, I don't know, but I'm just going to put it out there. And if in July we've made contact, then there you go. But that's my take on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, I, I am a psychic medium. I do have a lot of dreams about looking up and seeing crafts. And a few weeks ago, I had one where I looked up and it dropped like a capsule into my hand, and there was this liquid in it, and you're supposed to drink it. But I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to drink this. And then this man, alien guy, took me into a cave, and it was full of gemstones. And I was like, oh my God, I could sell these on eBay, which is like a very dream thing to say, not a psychic thing. And he goes, no, 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 you can't touch these. These are part of the world, and these are here for a greater purpose. And I mean, obviously, could I have dreamed it because of everything going on? Yes. But then I talked to some people that were like, actually, there is a cave like that near where you live. And that's kind of it. And there is something about this liquid in a cup. And so it'll be interesting to find out what does happen. But my concern is that we that people will respond with fear. That's what and they're saying, oh, these are hostile. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe some are, but I feel like they're hostile out of self-defense because the military is doing experiments on them and um, crashing them or taking alien bodies and doing stuff with them. I have always understood that these beings are here to help us and they're here in peace. Now, I don't know if that applies to all beings, but if they were coming to take over our planet, I feel they would have done that already. And I do have a sort of an excitement about meeting them because I do think they're here to help us be better and to evolve. And that if they are hostile, it's out of self-defense because back in the 80s, we had a lot of movies about that, about the government shoot them down, like kill they're aliens. And there's a lot of themes around that. And people will get scared because we don't know. Are they friendly? Are they here to hurt us? We don't know. Therefore, we have to act as if they're enemies. But I really hope that we can receive them with love. And I hope that we can be open to what they have to teach us and that it will go that way. But I can understand why the government doesn't want to tell us about it because everyone might freak out and God knows what people are going to do. Are they going to flee? Are they going to try to escape? Are they going to like arm up? Or I just hope that it will be a peaceful encounter and that we will understand that these aren't aliens. They are, we're all like that. We're all one, even with them.
Right. Yes, I completely agree. And what that made me think of is, you know, tapping back into my art history background. I mean, they've probably been here, you know, already. I think
Yeah,
they've probably helped us evolve through the histories. I mean, how else would you explain the pyramids in Mexico
I know.
being developed at the same time or similar to around the same times than the pyramids in Egypt, right? And that these two cultures weren't able to cross or communicate. They didn't have internet and being like, hey, what are you doing over there? How are you doing it?
Right.
Like it's so it makes complete plausible sense that they've come here. And there's so many myths and stories about
Yeah.
that, even if you go into the mythic realm of it. Um, I think they've been here for eons already and helped us evolve. I think it's now just a matter that, modern society is going to hear that they actually are here and who they are. And yes, I do believe that there's going to be a fear outburst. But I mean, with COVID, there was a fear outburst
Yeah.
and so there's always, something. And I agree with you. I hope we can receive them with love. I mean, like you said, I also don't know if there's other species that might be,
Yeah.
hostile, might not be so, I don't know, loving or coming here with a compassionate intention. But everything that I personally have experienced around that topic has been loving and has been very lightful. And so I can only speak to that.
Me too. Yeah. And just as we wrap up, I'd just like to talk a little bit about your work and what you do. I know you specialize in different modalities, so I know it's a lot. You're like me, where we have like, all these different things we've studied and can practice. So you can kind of speak from wherever you'd like to, just about what it is that you offer to people and what your services are and how these sort of energy healing modalities can help people in their lives and yeah, just anything you want to share about your work.
Sure. So I kind of using all of these modalities to make something that's completely my own in some way.
Yeah.
So I use my intuitive abilities, my mediumship abilities, as well as whatever I know about, my coaching certifications and all of that, plus the energy healing to kind of help people feel empowered and help them find their life purpose. So that's really, so I never really know what's going to happen in a session, but because it's downloaded, I really work with spirit, and spirit will tell me. That's how my intuitive abilities come in.
Right.
Spirit will tell me this is going on, that's going on, then we'll have a conversation, and then spirit will chime in and be like, this is the way. And so I might bring in some coaching tools, or I might hear, we really need to do some energy healing. And then we'll do energy healing to propel you forward. So it's in some ways, and I hope I'm not going to get in trouble saying this, but it's in some ways a new therapeutic modality that I'm developing that makes, that's almost like, it's a little bit of like a talking aspect in there, but
Hmm.
it's faster because we also use the energetics of the body and the spiritual, realms to propel you forward faster. So if you were in talk therapy, maybe you would talk about something for 3 years and not really kind of get, come like a have like a significant, what do you say,
Breakthrough or
breakthrough. Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, that's the word I was searching for. Like have a significant breakthrough. Here, it's really like we'll talk, and then there's going to be energy healing, and then your energetic body and your higher self is going to work through it. And it's really a modality that's seeing the mind, the body, and the soul, and not just the mind or not just the body, right? But we're seeing it as a transpersonal self. So it's coming from a transpersonal modality. And so I use everything. Sometimes I'll even throw like breath work in there, or any like
Hmm.
a yoga pose, or whatever else. I have a system called spiritual response technique that works with the high self, and is very much related to past life regression and working with the Akashic records to see why are we
Mm.
having certain relationships? What are the negative influences in our lives? How can we delete them out? And then there's Reiki and vortex healing and all of that. So I bring all of it in. I do it virtually. I also do it in person. And so that's my main gig. That's what I do mainly with people one-on-one. And then I teach yoga, not yoga, Reiki. I teach
Hmm.
Reiki. So, if you're local in New Jersey, I do teach Usui, Tibetan Reiki 1 through 4, and have weekends where I teach people how to use energy healing and all that. And down the line, I would love to teach this to moms and to caretakers and work with kids, but I'm not
Yeah.
quite there yet. So we'll see how spirit moves me.
I love that. I do the same. I'm a medium, right? So people will come for mediumship, but I'm also a bit of a medical intuitive. And so I might, if I feel like we're leaning in that direction, I might go there. Or I also do Reiki. But I'd love to talk about Reiki because it's not my favorite modality to use, only because I don't have the immediate satisfaction of validating that it's working. And so I'd love to talk about how Reiki or any kind of energy healing, vortex energy healing actually works because we're all energy, right? So when we're healers, we aren't healing the person. We are showing them how to heal themselves in a sense, and you can put it in your own words. How does energy healing work? Because I use it sometimes on my cat or myself, um, and in fact, as you said, wanting to teach it to moms, I have been a nanny my whole life, and I had a little baby he would just have a really hard time getting to sleep. And I came down and the mom's like, how did you get him to sleep? I'm like, I literally just I do Reiki on them. I just go, the baby's screaming their head off, and I just go up and I just go, and all of a sudden, baby just drops. Like I'm not talking, I'm not speaking, I'm just saying in my mind, help this baby to relax and give the rest they need and let them surrender and let go of agitation. And like I just intend it. And I've done it with two or three little kids where I just watch them suddenly just relax and plop down and right out. So I just love to hear your thoughts on Reiki, energy healing, anything you'd like to share, and why it works, and how do we heart. Why is Reiki different from Yeah, like any other, how are we actually harnessing this energy?
Hmm. I think that Reiki is natural in all of us. I mean,
Yeah.
there's people arguably that say you don't need a Reiki training, it's all within us. And I think that that's true, that some people will do bring it through like lifetimes and they might not
Hmm.
need an attunement. I mean, I don't know, you know. I think that most people will need an attunement and they will need a little bit of like instruction in it in some way, shape, or form. And I always advocate for finding it in person versus doing anything online.
Yeah.
Although I've taken, when I was already attuned by a person, like I had taken many, many trainings in person, I have done an online one, and that was
Mhm.
excellent. But I think I wouldn't have done it as my first training. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
I was
But
trained master level all the way online, and I just kept wishing because it was pandemic time. And I was
right,
like, I really wish I could do this in person. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I think that the way it works is really it's based on free will in some ways too, right? Um, so what I always say is that like when people come to me and they're like, "Oh, you've done such wonderful things on my friend. Do the same thing with me." I will always say, "I'm not the healer. Okay, you're the healer, because
Hmm.
we have self-healing abilities. And the moment that we make a decision that we want to heal in whatever way, we're going to heal. And whether it's through Reiki, whether it's through talk therapy, whether it's if there is a block, whether it's conscious or unconscious from the person, you can go to the greatest healer, the greatest guru. They're not going to heal you because we have
Yeah.
free will and our own healing abilities and now, of course, when I'm decided I want to heal and I go see somebody, right? Like that's when the magic really happens. And that's when spirit steps in. But even there, I'm not the one who does the healing, right? I always
Yeah.
give it up to spirit and I let spirit direct how to work with the person and what the person needs in this moment, and if it's Reiki or if it's something completely different. I also think that Reiki is just the beginning energy of it's like a beginner's form of energy that's just become really popular in the world. But I think there's millions of other energies floating around in the universe, and Reiki will vibe with some and it won't with others, right? Like some people will feel really drawn to Reiki and it will work really well if you're drawn to it because you trust it. I think the key here is trusting the modality, right?
Yeah.
And trusting that it's going to work, right? Whether you feel something and you have like this aha, rainbows and unicorns and I don't know whatever experience, or you are just soundly asleep, it's working through you somehow. You're gonna see it working. Um, but so that's kind of like, I mean, and going back to we all have it, moms, when they go to a child, like, if you're a mom or a caretaker, even, right? You see a child and the child hurt itself, right? You come up to them and you put your hand on it. That's an instinctive thing. And it speaks to that we all have healing energy within us, right? Whether we're tuned to it, whether we had a training course in it, we can all heal with our hands. We can all, do that with our minds even. So that's what I think. Reiki specifically, when you get attuned, it works through your chakras and specifically through your heart chakra because it's very much attuned to the compassion and the love energy, the love frequency, very high frequency. And so it works through your heart chakra and it opens your heart chakra up so that it can work through your hands and the palms, which are just extensions of the heart chakra. And I believe I was told by an acupuncture student the other day that in acupuncture, and anybody can correct me, but this is what she was telling me. In acupuncture, these are actually points that lead back. So they have been, discovered in other modalities too, and they lead back to the heart. So that's kind of like how Reiki flows out of you. And I too have made the experience that children are specifically receptive of the Reiki energy. But I've also noticed differences. So my daughter is a little bit of like a spirited baby. She's very high energy, very, very sensitive, but also very high energy, very fiery. Even as a baby, cried a lot, hyper vigilant because I think everything is just overwhelming for her. And she is very iffy when it comes to Reiki. Like, I the other day I was like, "Can I give you Reiki?" And she's 4 years old, so she was like, "Okay." And she felt the energy, and I think it was overwhelming for her. And she was like,
Oh, yeah.
"Okay, mom, that's enough." And she kind of went away. It's sort of like animals. I've noticed my cats sometimes they just want to pet,
Yep.
pinch, because they're already so naturally connected to it. However, my son, who's 2 now, he's like the baby you described. So I actually, when I put him to bed, we have our routine, and then there's this unspoken routine where telepathically I ask him, "Can I give you Reiki?" And I usually get a yes. And I give him Reiki and he's out like a light. I mean,
Yep.
within 5 minutes, this baby is fast asleep. And so I'm like, man, if I could only teach this to some moms or even caretakers, right? What a game changer this would be. So
Yeah.
he's really receptive to the Reiki energy. But I also have an intuitive insight that I think he wants to be a healer. And I think he's worked with these healing modalities beforehand. So he's kind of just naturally drawn to them. Whereas I think my daughter wants to go also be a healer, but be in a little bit of a different direction. And I think she's not so connected to the energy healing part as
Yeah.
maybe us. So, and I think that's, everybody connects to it differently. I think some people might connect to the Reiki energy, others might connect more to the vortex healing energy because it's a different frequency and it might vibe better with your body. So it's good to just kind of try out different modalities and see what works for you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And your website, it's Dr. Christine. Is that the website? And I'll have it
Right.
below. But I'm just for
Yeah.
those who may be visually impaired. Just it's drchristine.com. No apostrophe, just ITS.
Right.
And that's where we can find you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about anything you have coming up or special services that you're offering?
Um, not really. I mean, you can book an appointment with me virtually
Mhm.
as well, wherever you are in the world. Just go on that website and you'll see how to get to the booking link. And then if you're local in New Jersey, right, and you want to come in locally, northern New Jersey, I have several Reiki classes lined up. So I'm teaching this. So if you want to learn how to do this, you can come and learn how to do it with me. But other than that, nothing else. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I loved this conversation, and I know there's so many good things in here that I know will inspire and resonate with other people. So I just want to thank you so much for joining me on Magic is Real to share your insights, your spiritual journey, and your experiences with us. It's been such a pleasure, Christine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Shannon.
My pleasure.